Hello, my name is Sam Hindman, recording from Point Park University's recently reopened Center for Media Innovation. Pittsburgh legend Rick Sebak and documentarian is our special guest here today. But first off, let me introduce you to my fellow student media leaders. We have campus radio station WPPJ's General Manager Andrew Bensch and UView Television's reporter and social media coordinator Natalea Hillen. Rick Sebak, thank you so much again for joining us today.
I'm honored to be here in this new space. It's excellent.
Yes, I'm so happy that you're here to celebrate the new Center for Media Innovation. And to get things started, we're going to have Natalea kick off your first question.
Sure.
So I first want to know, how did you get involved in broadcasting from the start? Like, what piqued your interest? How did you get a passion for everything that you've done so far in your career?
Wow, it's sort of complicated, I guess. I didn't know what I wanted to do, I think, when I went away to college. I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I think from the start I knew I'd probably be a double major in English and something else, just because I always loved English class and all of that. And I had done a lot of theater and little theater in high school. At Bethel Park High School, where I grew up, we actually had like a very cool experimental theater in our school then, called Theater 400, because it was in room 400, and we did amazing things with that group. So I thought maybe I would be a theater major, and I started to do that. And as a theater student, you had to go be talent for a TV workshop.
Ooh.
So we're in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. It's not too far to Raleigh. It's about 30 miles, I think.
Okay.
And we'd have to go to a TV station on Saturday mornings, and the TV class was able to use us as questioners or news people or actors or whatever they wanted us to do. And I just loved that class. I thought the TV class was better than any theater class I was taking. And I said, I want to take a class with that professor. And they said, well, in order to take his class, you have to be a major. And I said, I don't care, I'll change my major. And so I did. I double majored in English. And that they call it now communications, but when I went there in the early 70s, it was called RTVMP, Radio, Television, Motion Pictures. And so that's what I did. I shifted my focus and I started telling people I think I'm interested in television. Sesame Street was pretty new then, and I loved that idea. And so I thought maybe I would go into kids television. And because of that and talking about that, one time in the old Pittsburgh Press, which was a daily newspaper here in Pittsburgh, my mom saw an article that mentioned that Josie Carey was doing a children's soap opera in South Carolina. Well, I was in North Carolina. That was in South Carolina, but that's close enough to someone from Pittsburgh. And she said, you should send her a letter if you want to go work in children's television. And so I did. Josie Carey helped found WQED here in Pittsburgh. The very first program that was done at WQED was called Children's Corner. It was produced by Josie Carey and Fred Rogers.
Nice.
You seldom saw Mr. Rogers on that show. He was just the puppets. Occasionally he would make a cameo appearance, but I don't think he was ever proud of them. But the show was really good, and Josie was a huge star here in Pittsburgh when I was a kid. So I wrote her a letter, and I said I remembered her from Pittsburgh, and I was interested in television, and I was looking for a summer internship. And she responded. She said, why don't you come down to Columbia, South Carolina, and we'd like to meet you. When is your spring break? So on spring break, I went down to Columbia, South Carolina. I met her. They liked me, and they said, great, we'll take you for the summer. And that really sort of shifted my focus. I don't know when exactly I realized that I loved all of television. It didn't have to be kids' television, although I worked on that show, which was called Whee! WHEEE exclamation point. And I worked on that. At the end of the summer, she said, do you want to stay on? And I thought, like, whoa. But I had arranged to do my junior year abroad in France, and that was too big an opportunity to pass up. So I said, no, I'm gonna stick with my plans, and I went to France for a year. And when I came back, she invited me back, and I actually became a character, a puppet character, so I could show her some of the things that I, postcards and things like that from my year in France. And after I graduated, I spent a good 6 to 9 months looking for a job. And at some point, those folks in South Carolina remembered me and said, hey, we have this thing, we need an associate producer, production assistant to work on this project. Are you available? And I said yes, and I went back, and there was an opening for a writer, and I liked that idea, and I ended up working there for 11 years for public television. So it's really, since I graduated from college, I've only had 2 jobs, both in public television. First for South Carolina Educational Television, they call it. It's a network of stations in the state of South Carolina. And I worked there for 11 years, and the guy that I had worked with there in South Carolina, he had moved on to the PBS station in Denver, Colorado. And we were good friends, and he called me one day and said, hey, there's an ad in Broadcasting Magazine that you should answer. And I said, why? And he said, it's WQED in Pittsburgh. And I said, do I want to go back to Pittsburgh? And he said, you never see a big station like WQED advertising for a producer. He said, you should send a tape. And so I did. And I think you often hear this, that when you're not that desperately looking for a job, this is when you'll find one. My station in South Carolina had just sent me to Australia for 28 days, so I was loving my job there. And but I sent a tape and sort of a flip letter that said I'd worked downtown one summer and my parents were still in Bethel Park and all of that. And they called me and said, we'd like to meet you. Why don't you come see your parents? And so I did, and I came and did a whole day of job interviews. I remember it was more than I ever expected. Then they said, yes, we'd like to have you, which I think was so fast I didn't know. It was a very hard decision whether to stay in South Carolina, leave all my friends there, and come back to Pittsburgh, which I had never really been hankering to do. I think sometimes you hear about boomerang people to Pittsburgh. I wasn't looking to get back to Pittsburgh, but I have never once regretted it. It's worked out. It's been really fun, and I think coming back to Pittsburgh after having been away for with 11 years in South Carolina and 5 years in North Carolina, 16 years I was gone, then I started to realize just how interesting and great Pittsburgh is. And, as far as the city goes, it's like, to me, endlessly fascinating. Mm-hmm. So, does that answer your question? That's how I sort of got into TV.
Absolutely.
So
I actually was shown Kennywood Memories, whenever I was in 8th grade.
Okay.
So my question for you is, did you expect, your work to reach groups like educators? Have you ever been surprised, that people from certain industries have, watched your work?
Well, I always say I love it when I hear that a teacher is using one of my programs in a classroom, although I never really intended them to be strictly educational. I think what I want to do is share my sort of sense of surprise. And I always remember a teacher that I had in Chapel Hill, and he said, I know you kids don't want to acknowledge this, but you will get tired of everything in life, except for one thing, learning new things. And I think that's so totally true. To be surprised by some new nugget of information or, something you didn't know, it's endlessly fascinating. So but I love that teachers use it. But obviously, when I came for my job interview that day, I had done a documentary in South Carolina about the state dance, which is called the shag. And it's a sort of slow jitterbug that people did principally at the beginning at the beaches of South Carolina. There's a kind of music that people in the Carolinas know very well called beach music. It's old black rhythm and blues that you dance to. I had done that documentary, and the woman who had brought me to Pittsburgh for this job interview, Nancy Lavin, she said, well, if you come here, we'd have to find something for you to do like shag. And at my job interview, I said, I would love to do a documentary about Kennywood. And she said, ooh, that amusement park. And she was from San Francisco, and she had never been to Kennywood. And I said, it's really important, I think, to people who grow up here, that whole Kennywood experience, that once a year day kind of thing. And to her credit, I was here not a year before she said, why don't you look into that Kennywood thing? And, you know, it worked out. I called Kennywood, and I got a guy who was one of their salespeople, and I said, you know, I work at WQED. We're thinking about doing a documentary about Kennywood. And he goes, that sounds good. And I said, could we come out tomorrow? And he goes, sure, come on out. I said, could 10 of us come? And so a whole bunch of us went. And that's what started it. And then that summer, the summer of 1988, we shot 26 days at Kennywood, which was pretty amazing. And I say that over my it's 36 years I've been at WQED. Locally, the thing I'm still most known for is Kennywood Memories, I think. Nationally, because I've gotten to do shows for PBS as well, I think it's a hot dog program. That's the one that people seem to know more around the country. But I don't mind that. And actually, you know, when I did a series of shows called Nebby, I realized I had hurt my leg. I was not so, you know, nimble as I used to be. And I said, you know, like, there's all that footage we didn't use for Kennywood. So I did 2 more half hours, one called That Kennywood Summer, and then another called Don't Stand Up, which is what the signs say at the top of the racer. But, you know, it's just an interesting thing, I think, that we all love this amusement park. And although now it seems as though I go most often at Christmas time. I just love the Christmas lights and all that, and they always ask me to come and recite "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." So, you know, but yeah, I mean, you never know when you put something out and it's broadcast. You don't know where it's going to go. But I love it when teachers use it, and I love it when anyone, you know, surprises me by saying, "Oh, I really like." You know, when I encounter people, if they mention one that most people don't mention, that's what I really love. You know, so say, you know, I really love your show, Houses Around Here. I was like, wow, great. So.
Well, one of the first documentaries of yours that I ever watched was Things That Aren't There Anymore. And being a Pittsburgh native, what is one thing or place in the Pittsburgh area that's not there anymore that you miss the most, and why?
Wow, that I miss the most. I always think, you know, superlatives are hard because, you know, they sort of make you want to, they can get you into trouble. But, what do I miss? If you watch the program, I mentioned Nancy Lavin, the woman who had hired me. She always called that the Isleys program because there was so much Isleys in it. But I missed Isleys. There were still hold-ons like the one in Westview. You know, there used to be one on East Ohio Street too, but they weren't really the way the old Isleys used to be. I certainly missed that, but it was just fun. We did that show because it was winter and we didn't want to go out and shoot stuff necessarily in the lousy weather. And I tell this story somewhere that I was still living at my parents' house in Bethel Park, and I used to come in through the Liberty tubes. And I remembered that in the tubes, there used to be neon signs that said, "Do not cross center line." There were neon signs that hung from the ceiling. And I thought, what happened to them? You know, we should do a show about things like that, things that aren't there anymore. So that's how that all got started. Oddly enough, we followed it up with another show called Stuff That's Gone. And that even included TV shows that were gone. We did Ricky and Copper, which was a kids show that I was on when I was 5, and thanks to my mom. And then I started to work a lot with the Buell Foundation. The Buell Foundation here in town has just been, you know, just wonderful to me and has supported my work quite a bit. But and the first thing we did with them was North Side Story, but then I said something about maybe another things that aren't there anymore, and they said, we don't want to celebrate things that aren't here anymore. So we shifted it around and did things that are still here. Oddly enough, tonight, the day we're recording this, that show is on QED tonight. But I just looked at it recently. there are lots of things in my show, things that are still here that are now gone. So, and the one that I was looking at was Ligonier Beach, which used to be out on Route 30 in Westmoreland County. And it was just a great place. On a hot summer day to go to Ligonier Beach, it was a giant swimming pool filled by natural springs. It was freezing cold. So like on a 90-degree day, the water was only like, 35 or 40 degrees. It was really cold, but it was really fun and a great place. And, in addition to what was there, there were, great stories of Dean Martin used to go there and perform and stuff because he was from Youngstown, Ohio or whatever. And so I love learning about all this stuff around us. And I think I often mention that, as the 19th century became the 20th century, Pittsburgh was a world capital. And we still benefit from that. The money that's here, the history that was, made here, and, everything from alternating current, which was George Westinghouse, and he was its big champion. That's so huge. And the Ferris wheel, and I think the one that surprises everyone is oil. Oil is first pumped from the ground in Titusville, Pennsylvania. So it's just, this part of the world was really important. And Meadowcroft Rock Shelter, I don't know if you know that. Is it Washington County or is it farther down? I'm not sure. Is it Greene County? I'm not sure where. But it is still one of the earliest evidences of human habitation in North America, which is like so totally weird. How could they get here without, if they came across the Bering Strait in Alaska, it's a long way to get to Meadowcroft Rock Shelter. But thanks to the archaeologists who did the digs there and everything, they proved that there were people there, I think 15,000 years ago. So I can't remember how we got there, but
Well, there's
things that aren't there anymore.
There's tons of things to do in Pittsburgh. Even just now, in this day and time, discovering new things. I recently just went to the Fort Pitt Museum near the Point and learned a lot about Pittsburgh history. So I thought that was really cool. Like, even living in Pittsburgh, there's so much to learn and see each and every day.
For sure.
But for my next question, what is your favorite interview documentary show that you've worked on so far in your career? And I know that's a tough question, but if you had to narrow down your favorite pieces that you've worked on, what is your, in the top couple?
Well, yeah, it is impossible because they're my children. It's, I would say that, if someone twists my arm, I prefer the local documentaries over the national documentaries because no one can love a national documentary the way Pittsburghers love a Pittsburgh documentary.
Sure.
So, as a collection, my Pittsburgh history series, I love. I mentioned Houses Around Here. I will often say that's my favorite of the not famous programs. But of all of my shows, and this is a little bit weird, I think my favorites are A Hot Dog Program and Sandwiches That You Will Like, which are national shows. But when we started Hot Dogs, I guess I was at QED 11 years then. And it was the first time that I was able to, I guess I had enough of a reputation and everything that I could hand pick my crew. Usually crews were assigned to you, but now I said, okay, we're going to do this national program and I want to work with this person and this person and this person, and it worked out. And so it made it a better experience. And we were traveling all over the country. When we did Hot Dogs, we were doing hot dogs and amusement parks at the same time. So if we went to a city, we would look for a hot dog place and an amusement park. And amongst the crew, they said, no one's ever going to watch this hot dog program. But, the great old amusement parks, everybody will love that. But it worked out that the hot dog program made a sort of bigger splash, although I'm still very proud of both of them. Then because the hot dog program was so successful for PBS, they gave me money to do one. Sandwiches That You Will Like began as a fundraiser program, where we did pledge breaks and all of that. I just love that combination, I guess, of food. No matter what subject I do, I try to bring food in.
We love food.
Yes,
Everyone loves food.
And actually, food in Pittsburgh right now is just really great. There's so many interesting places to go, and old traditional places that still have great food and great reasons to go visit them. So
That's actually my next question for you.
Okay.
Was food related. Out of all these amazing places, yeah, you gotta name it. What is your favorite place to eat in Pittsburgh?
I don't have a favorite place. You guys got to stop these favorite questions. No more favorite questions.
Top 3.
No, I mean, it's just, where would I take you if you were new in town? That's, I think, I love to take people to Emil's in Rankin. It's EMIL''S. It's an old steelworker bar. It's not flashy at all. And if you put it in your GPS, I haven't heard them say this for a while, but Rankin is right next to Braddock, and both communities have that same address. So they would always say, don't put in our address, put in the Rankin's police station, because it's right across the street. And then you could see Emil's from there. But they have an incredible fish sandwich, not just during Lent, but year-round, and a stupendous Reuben sandwich. And, I remember that I was contacted by Andrew Zimmern's crew. He's the guy that, that's the Travel Channel that I think that he works for. He did Bizarre Foods and then Bizarre Foods America. And when he was doing Bizarre Foods America, they came to Pittsburgh. And oddly, somebody that I had worked with at WQED was the executive producer of that show down in Washington, D.C. And he called me and he said, would you be Andrew's guide to the Strip? Because I had done the Strip show here about the Strip District. And I said, sure. And they said, his producer that was here like a week before Andrew Zimmern arrived said, is there any places that we should know about that we may not have heard about? And I said, well, I always love to take people to Emil's. And so they did. They went to Emil's, and Andrew Zimmern just loved it. And he's been back 3 times, including for a show that he did about like his 10 places he loved across America, and he included Emil's. And so it's still just a humdinger of a place, I think. That's near Carey Furnace. A lot of people now know about the Carey Furnace, the old steel mill that you can go to. It's right there along the banks of the Monongahela. And I have a little Thai restaurant in Blawnox that I love called Mainam Thai. It's tiny. It seats 6 people. I mean, there's 3 tables with 2 chairs.
Oh my goodness.
But the food is excellent. I mean, a lot of people get takeout. And during the pandemic, it was all takeout. Yeah. But now they've put 3 tables back in. And I don't know, there's something about it. It just, it's Thai food that always tastes fresh because she cooks it. Supani Konsuwan is her name, but she goes by Ni. Supani is her name, and then she just uses Ni, the last part of it. And she's just really a wonderful cook, chef, and I love to take people there just because it's so tiny, and it's in Blawnox. And that's right along the Allegheny River. And I'm trying to think, where else might I take you? I love Dee's Hot Dogs in my neighborhood, Regent Square. I love Las Palmas for tacos. And actually, there's a little Honduran restaurant on the Ohio River in Coraopolis that I've been to now 3 times, just because it's unusual Honduran food. So I'm always looking for new places and unusual places. The other night, I asked trivia questions. I was asked to do a little thing for a group out there in Dravosburg, and that was really close to Jim's Jim's Famous Sauce. I don't know if you know this place in West Mifflin, but it's a hot dog place. And when I got out of there, it was still open. It was open till 9. It was like 8:30 and I thought like, wow, Jim's is still open. And it's a really great hot dog. And, you know, that's another place that I just like to surprise people with. It's off the beaten path a little bit. It's on Skyline Drive in West Mifflin. So, you know, there's 3 places at least.
Yeah.
I'm trying, maybe I should have said at least one fancy place.
No.
But
Who needs
know.
those, right?
Right. I mean, you know, I love the breaded oysters at the Oyster House downtown here too.
Still never been there.
Oh, that's the oldest restaurant in Pittsburgh
I
now.
have heard that. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So, but I don't know anywhere else that makes a breaded oyster like that. It's like a ball of dough with an oyster in the middle, and then it's deep fried. And it's you know, it's not a fried oyster, which has a little thin coating on the outside. It has a ball of dough.
Nice.
And I think they're just, you know, such an unusual thing. I love them too.
Thank you.
Hey.
You've obviously done many documentaries over your career, but is there still a subject area that you want to do a documentary on? And was there ever a documentary that you started working on and then for some reason it fell through?
No, I usually, you know, the way things are done at QED is we have to raise the money first. And so once something starts, it usually gets done. Now, are there things that never started? Yeah. But mostly just in the proposal stage. Actually, I just today mentioned to someone at work, I put together a big proposal for a national series called Numbered Highways, just because I love highways. I did a whole show on the Lincoln Highway. And actually, you know, the parkway here would be part technically of the Lincoln Highway now because it's 30. And from Philadelphia to western Wyoming, Route 30 was at one time the Lincoln Highway. I learned all this because of Brian Butko at the Historical Society, who one day I drove out to Bedford with him, and if you don't take the turnpike, you're on 30 usually. And I learned all about the Lincoln Highway, which was the first cross-country highway. It went from New York City to San Francisco. Really, when there weren't, you know, paved roads in many parts of the Midwest and West. And they didn't ever build that highway. They just identified a route as the Lincoln Highway. So there are all kinds of guidebooks that can show you different routes of the Lincoln Highway. And I just have such great memories of doing that show. I mean, we crossed the country 4 times. I just love that. So I put together a thing to do other numbered highways, and we submitted it to PBS in March of 2020. And then the next week, the pandemic began. So it was just like the worst time in history to put in a proposal. I don't know if I can revive that one or not, but I still like that idea. And there's, you know, sometimes there are people that don't want to do it right away, but I try to be persistent enough. And there was a classic radio show on KDKA radio here called Party Line, which I did a story about. When I was growing up, my mother and her mother were big fans of Party Line. It was a radio show with a husband and wife, and usually a co-host, 3 hosts, and it was just a general conversation. And I just remembered it so fondly from when I was a kid. And every night they would have a question called the Party Pretzel, and they would challenge people to answer the Party Pretzel. One night it was on, and I guess it was at our house, and I heard, you know, them say on the air, and you never heard the callers. It was always just the host. They would repeat. They say, "Oh, there's a caller on the line." La 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 la. So, excuse me. They said, "There's a caller on the line wants to know what's the bird with the largest wingspan." I think I was in 7th or 8th grade, and we had it that day. And I said, "Mom, I know the answer to that. It's the South American condor." And she said, "Well, call them." And so I did, and got through, you know. And I talked to Wendy, who was the wife host, and she said, "There's a young caller on the line who says the bird with the largest wingspan is the South American condor." And then I got to interview Wendy many years later for a show. I think that's in Stuff That's Gone, the old party line. Ed and Wendy King were the couple, and then there was the third guy. It changed over the years, but there's actually a story right now that I would like to get that I'm having a little trouble with because I don't know why the business just says no, we're not interested, and I'm not out to fry them or anything. I want to celebrate, but we'll see. I'm still working on that.
So I know you probably dealt with a lot of like struggles and everything like that. What's one piece of advice that you have for students in the communications majors right now to better their careers in the future?
Try anything. I mean, actually one of the things that I love is, we now all carry a broadcast quality camera in our pockets usually. And, to learn how to use an editing app and, learn what sounds good, talk to anybody, put things together of all sorts. Just, the stuff you were doing for TikTok, that's all important, I think. I'm still so old-fashioned. I hate that TikTok is vertical video. I want horizontal video. Because if you put that on TV, you have to put those black bars, and I think, no, let's turn the camera. But yes, read everything. Read and write whenever you can. When I came for the job interview, there were so many applications, and I said to that woman who was hiring me, I said, how do you go through so many applications? And she said, if there's a grammatical error, I just throw it away. And so writing is so important, and for that first impression, even if it's a text, I think if you want it to be correct and you want the words to be right, so it's good to be always reading and writing and all of that, and experimenting. If you want to go into media, experiment with shooting and editing and learning as much as you can, as fast as you can. And searching for opportunities like internships and things like that. Because I always say, the trick is with an internship, go and make yourself indispensable. Sometimes people are reticent to get involved, but no, make yourself indispensable, and it could pay off.
In the early phases of your career, was there ever a moment where you had a discussion with, say, a mentor or colleague, and you learned a lesson that really positively impacted you and traveled along with you in your career?
Wow, I'm sure there were. I'm just trying to think what possibly can I, a specific memory of some. Well, actually, the guy who I mentioned became the executive producer for Andrew Zimmern's shows on the Travel Channel. I can remember he was also a producer at QED, and I forget why we were talking and everything, and I was putting a show together, and he goes, well, what's your best story? Because my shows are always a collection of little stories. And I said, I think it's this one. He goes, well, that's your first story. He said, you want to put your best story first, your second best story last, and your third best story right in the middle, and then you can figure out where the other ones go. And I thought that was such good advice that I've always, remembered that. You want to try and put your best foot forward to grab the audience, and then hold on to them, and and put peaks where you can. And but then the last one is the thing. But now with social media, so many things are chopped up, and I even know that you want something that's shorter. Actually, I talked with an editor today. I said, is 6 minutes too long for a clip? It's hard to know. Is 4 minutes okay? But it's, you try and you see what catches on. So, yeah. And that's one thing that I remember, that little bit of advice about how to put a show together.
That's good advice.
Yeah, it is good advice. And there's another guy I remember that told me, don't make the music so loud. But
All right.
and
Well, in 2018, You made Pittsburgh Magazine's list of the top 50 the greatest Pittsburghers of all time. How do you feel about that honor? And what does being a Pittsburgher mean to you?
You're right. It was unexpected and amazing. It was such a great honor and sort of humbling. I was number 50 out of the 50. Number 1 was Fred Rogers. But it was nice that we were at either end of this list. And I mean, it included everybody from H.J. Hines to Rachel Carson, a wide variety of Pittsburghers, many of whom I'd done stories and written about and all of that. But I was honored but also proud because, as I said, I had no desire to come back to Pittsburgh. But once I got back, I realized I was totally in love with the place, and it fascinated me perpetually. I'm still always happy to find out new things about Pittsburgh, and so that's really what I do, I guess.
That's lovely. Mm-hmm.
What's your greatest memory that you have in Pittsburgh so far? With either before you moved away for your other jobs or in the last couple of years?
I don't know the answer to that. It's one of those superlative questions. I just don't know. My favorite memory. Do you have a favorite memory?
Yeah.
Oh.
What's your favorite memory from 2023? Anything in this year so far? It's been pretty amazing. It could be this. That could be your answer.
That's true.
It was funny. I've been playing records at a bar in Squirrel Hill.
Oh, cool.
In the Independent Brewing Company. I do it on Wednesday nights. Because I'm a hoarder, we talked about hoarder tendencies before we began all this. I still have all my vinyl, which I started to collect, I guess, when I was in junior high. And I found out during the pandemic that they play vinyl at that bar on Wednesday nights, and I said, I want to do this. And they said, we'd be happy to have you. So, almost for 2 years now, I've been doing it every Wednesday night. And that's one of my favorite memories because it's become a really sort of beautiful tradition. It's another guy that used to work at QED who retired during the pandemic, Lance Jones. He's been coming to play records with me, and he used to be the manager of Star Lake Amphitheater. Oh, okay. And so he's met all these rock stars that we're playing and everything, and that adds a whole nother dimension to it. And Pete Kurzweig, who owns the bar, he has a bookshelf full of LPs there, and so he comes in too. And then Maddie Burton, who's the manager, she comes and she brings records too. So it's become such a wonderful thing. And then we usually play from about 6 till about 8:30, and then we have dinner together. And I love it. Favorite memories. I'm sure I will remember this as the golden age of playing records at the Independent Brewing Company.
That's amazing.
All right. Well, Rick.
Hey.
Thank you so much.
I hope that was all okay.
Thank
it was
you so
incredible.
much.
And thank you so much for your
Amazing.
time, for joining us, for having a few laughs.
I thank you for the good questions. But
No problem.
I'm telling you, stay away from those superlatives.
Well, make sure to check out the many amazing Rick Sebak documentaries and specials on WQED's website. Reporting from the Center for Media Innovation, good night, everybody.